Ryan Ray alongside the good doctor herself, Dr. Ellen Wald. How you doing, Dr. Wald?
I am doing quite well today.
I see in the background back there you've shifted some things. What does that white signage
Yeah.
say?
Yes, that's a new sign for my business. I'm not really sure why it took me so long to get a sign, but this
And
one.
for all the listeners who want to hire you immediately, where could they go to find out about your business?
Go to transversalconsulting.com.
There you go. So
There you
call
go. Yeah,
hire Ellen today. Book her up for 2022, 2023,
exactly.
and 2024. Okay.
Precisely.
Well, good deal. A little bit of programming note here. Next week's podcast will be out. We're reshuffling some things, but midweek it looks like. So just it's going to be what that is. And then we will be off the 27th and 3rd for the holidays. So we'll do it next Wednesday. We'll do it next Monday, and then we'll be off for a couple weeks. So just an FYI. And then finally, I'll talk about that then. Anyways, okay, all right. Hi, Dr. Walt. Let's see here. Where are we starting at? Okay.
Yeah.
Our friends over at Bloomberg, Biden official heckled the oil group after urging Shell boost. Okay, so now the oil folks are heckling the Biden people.
I mean, come on. What did he? What did they think when they were walking into the turf of the American oil producer? What did they think was going to happen? Um, yeah, apparently Jennifer Granholm was wise enough not to attend herself. I assume they're talking about the World Petroleum Congress.
Yeah, Houston.
Says that so she said her deputy energy secretary David Turk, who told shale companies on Monday that the government's done its part by releasing crude from the SPR, and now it's their turn to produce more. And I gotta say this heckle. It says his remarks provoked. Oh no, let's see. He said the reality is the Biden administration is not standing in the way of increasing domestic oil production to meet today's energy needs. To which a heckler said, "Why don't you help us then?" Which I gotta say is like the tamest heckle I could ever think of. Like, if I mean,
I've seen folks get heckled, and I agree that you are correct there.
like no one threw a shoe at him or a tomato or I don't know, a face mask. Not that those would go very far, but
Yeah,
like,
I
I
thought
mean, come
heckling was
on.
yeah, I thought heckling was more like mocking, constantly interrupting. If you say something and someone in the audience responds to what you're saying in a somewhat decent manner, is that actually a heckle?
Yeah, I think that characterizing this as a heckle was a mistake on the part of Bloomberg News. I would say push back.
Now, perhaps if the person had a bullhorn and they were like through the bullhorn yelling that out, that would be
Yeah.
considered, I guess, a heckle. We need a heckle expert to come and break down where the line is of a heckle and what's not a heckle.
Did you ever watch the TV show You're the Worst on FXX?
No, I
Okay,
didn't.
well, you definitely should because it's hilarious. But one of the main characters would made kind of like a hobby out of heckling, to the
Uh,
point that he would compose a lot of heckles beforehand, even to then use at his main event. So yeah, I think this one probably would not have made the list,
okay,
as tame as it was.
the Doctor Energy ruling is not a heckle.
Not a heckle,
Not a
but
heckle.
deserve to be questioned. I mean, come on. Like, could you imagine the nerve of getting up there and saying, "Hey, we did our part. Now you do yours." Like,
I almost remember a story, it feels like, about, the federal lands. I'm trying to put my finger on it earlier this year. I can't remember. It's almost like they did something with that or pipelines or something, so it's almost. I don't know. I can't remember. Um, okay. Anyways, alright. So European power prices climb in freezing cold weather this week. Now, I was on Twitter a little bit earlier today, and I saw a lot of talk about the warm prediction for weather in the US. Despite that, the fact that I was tagged in a tweet, a few weeks ago saying that December 13th is gonna be like Snowmageddon, so I don't know if that's still the prediction,
mm,
or what. Yeah, I got tagged in a tweet a few weeks ago that said December 13th, like, "Get ready." It's
Snowmageddon is coming.
Yeah,
Is
I have
that
to
like
see.
a Friday? Just out of curiosity.
I think it's like midweek, isn't it?
No, it's a
No?
Monday. Okay.
Monday? Yeah. So, I will be in the
You'll
great
be in
state of
California. Hopefully, you'll be
California.
there already and not trying to get there.
Yes, I know. I know, but yeah, I mean, I think the prediction was like -11 temperatures in Texas.
That means it's like coming for us after that. I mean,
So
generally not -11, but like we've been having some like really lovely, warm, like low 70s weather here
oh,
that
yeah. Yeah,
I'm
it's
not
been nice here.
liking to see go. But all right, hey,
Yeah, I'm trying to find this tweet. Um, where did it go?
Snowmageddon is a coming.
Well, I'm assuming snow's coming
Maybe.
because I'm assuming snow's coming because, well, we know one thing about weather predictions, they're always right, especially this far out, so it's
Yes.
obviously this couldn't
Because
miss.
no one is better at predicting things. The only people better at predicting things than the people who predict oil prices are meteorologists.
Yeah. Here we go.
Oh
Here we
yeah, and epidemiologists who do that
go. Okay,
them too. They're great at predicting things.
right. So here we go. By December 13th, zonal west winds are much cooler at 4 degrees Celsius, not 12 degrees Celsius, unable to warm up the invading polar air, which is flooding the Midwest. Dakota's at minus 36 degrees Celsius, as cold Arctic Colorado at minus 32, going deep into the Texas Panhandle at minus 24, which is minus 11 degrees Fahrenheit. That's actually tagged by a podcast listener. So let me know
Ooh.
if this prediction is still good. I don't know if this is still a thing or not.
Hmm.
So, here's a tweet from 5 hours ago from this person. The difference between the forecast on the right and actual data from December 6th shows forecast temperatures were barely below freezing, yet actual data are showing minus 26-degree wind chill for the Dakotas and teens down to Texas. I continue to believe in a massive natural gas surge. So this person, I don't even know what that means because I thought like I don't. Okay, I guess they're saying that he's moving. I guess he's saying it's coming. I don't know. So, anyways, um, so there you go. There's your Ryan Ray weather forecast for the year. If we hit massive sub-zero temperatures in the U.S. next few weeks, you heard it here first. If not, blame the person that tagged me in that post. So,
It's
um,
interesting because natural gas fell like $10 a barrel. Right? I'm not a barrel.
but yeah,
What am I saying? Natural gas fell $10 recently on reports of warmer weather and a warmer winter in the US, which I was thinking would probably make like LNG at least a little bit more it would reduce, it would make it more attractive, or
mhm.
US LNG more attractive. But I mean, how quickly are things going to flip if we do end up getting really cold, if there is, what do they call it now, the Arctic, like when I was younger, I don't remember like having names for all these things, but now there's
Mhm.
like what is they call it when the Arctic thing comes down.
The Arctic cyclone is what this guy's.
Yeah, or the bull.
So yeah, I'll
Can't
send this to you
remember.
so you can check out this person. I don't
Yeah.
know who this person is. They were just tagged by a
Hmm.
podcast listener. So, as far as I know, they could be dead on the money or completely making it up. I'm not sure either way. Okay. All right, Dr. Wall. So, what is your thoughts on the European power prices that are surging? Because
Yeah, I think
if we
they're
have
really
I would
screwed
say
there.
if we have a warm winter here, that would theoretically help them by not having a crazy spike in prices. But if we have a crazy winter, then that would hurt. That would make it worse on them, right?
Yeah, I mean, my thought was that, they might at least help them a little bit by maybe reducing some of the costs, or at least making US LNG attractive enough that they can, think about affording to import it. But it does look like this is a really big problem. I mean, it's like in Sweden, it's I think I read something saying they're firing up like an oil plant. They're having to revert to a lot of fossil fuels. And if they can, there's some issues, I think in the article it says, with French nuclear plants.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it says, so in Sweden it is minus 40 Celsius, which, by the way,
Cold.
is the temperature at which Celsius and Fahrenheit converge, I believe. So minus 40 Celsius and minus 40 Fahrenheit are the same. That's north of Sweden, sorry. So that's like serious Arctic Circle. Um, it's, uh, and then Yeah, it says to shore up the balance in the grid, an oil-fired reserve plant was started in Sweden. So they are now burning oil for electricity. Then they're saying that benchmark gas and coal prices are elevated by low storage levels. Generating power at fossil fuel plants remains very expensive, also because of all the carbon credits that you have to buy. Then apparently it's cold and windless. So it's both very cold and not very windy, which is not good because they have a lot of wind plants. And then they're looking at whether France's nuclear plants are going to perform well, whether Russia is actually meeting its daily gas deliveries, which I did see somewhere that they were not when it came to gas deliveries through Ukraine, which is not surprising given that they're like sending, they've got like 175,000 troops on the Ukrainian border. I think I saw it this morning. And so this is all, I think, very concerning for Europe. And, there's a question like, there was some small country that said recently they were saying like they might have to just have power outages. Not good. Not good.
No, that's not what you're looking for. Yeah, and I mean, I'm no expert here, but a price increase of 69% is usually not good either. If it's something that you're buying, if you're selling it, it's fantastic. But if you're on the buying end, then it's not what you're looking for. Okay, the Saudis raise oil prices for Asia and the U.S. despite the Omicron's spread. Despite it, they said, you know what, COVID, we're going to despite you, and therefore we're going to do this.
Yeah, I was wondering, is this like is this the Saudis saying like, ha, Omicron, what a nothing burger, you know? Are they taking a side on? I was wondering, so is this an indication that they are taking a side on in the COVID debate over whether Omicron is something to be really, really worried about, or like basically like a mild cold? Because I was curious as to whether anyone read this in that respect, or they're just saying, we don't care, we're raising prices because we think that's what they'll pay. Because I got in a big Twitter argument the other day for basically saying that like I thought that the Omicron panic was receding because it's not like a worse variant or anything, and people were like, you don't know that. No, this person says it's really bad, when in fact, like, we don't have any. I mean, we didn't last week have evidence, and so far everything I'm hearing says it's like a mild cold.
Yeah, if you go back to when the Delta variant came out, it felt like that kind of caught news and then kept momentum pretty decently. Now, maybe it didn't, and I'm forgetting, but it felt like that was kind of the narrative for some time, whereas this one, it kind of took the world by storm and then kind of just petered out. I mean, there's still some stories around it, but, if you go back to Black Friday, or Thanksgiving Day, that night, whenever that news started breaking, it
Yeah,
was like headlines everywhere, and then now it's like, okay.
yeah.
Maybe, not a whole lot there.
Yeah, but what is this going to do? But it's interesting because they just increased. I mean, we've got an increase in production coming from OPEC. We've got the SPR release. We've got oil prices are down. I mean, I know they're coming back up a little bit today, but they're still down from where they were. But Aramco raised Arab Light grade for customers in Asia by 60 cents. So it's now $3.30 above the benchmark. This is for January, I think. And apparently that's the most expensive it's been since February 2020, which is pre-pandemic, pre-OPEC Russia, let the taps flow. So what does this mean? What does this mean for the rest of oil prices? Should they follow?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. So oil is up to WTI 69 and Brent's up to 72. And it felt like there was maybe a slight overreaction to the news on Black Friday, right? And the prices are rebounding. But I do wonder how susceptible we are to decent price swings with more news like this over the coming weeks. So will we get back up to the $75 and then boom, we fall back down to the low 60s again, or whatever it might be? If you kind of keep having these news Or is it one of those things to where eventually the market doesn't react to the news because it gets so used to, the new variant, and so it's like, whatever. But I guess if we get through winter and things start to open back up as far as people getting outside and moving and demand comes back up, we kinda get through that, right? What needs to
Yeah,
be confirmed?
yeah. I mean, yeah, winter. I think in yeah, it's definitely and demand is generally lower in winter. I think. I mean, it does seem like this was a read. You know, that this read raising the prices was something that kind of was in line for a lot of what people expected, I guess. But um, it is interesting. I mean, Amin Nasser, the CEO of Aramco, basically said he thinks the market had overreacted to Omicron, which is a perfectly legitimate point of view. It's interesting to like he thinks that, but how much of that is him thinking that, and how much of that is him saying it to make it so?
Right.
I mean, I got accused of like I think I said I gave a quote I think last week to Axios for their like generate newsletter. And it was interesting because there were like two other people who were quoted talking about the OPEC Plus meeting, and they were both like, "This is a statement to the Biden administration. This is and I was like, "Wow, I like did not read that like that at all."
Mhm.
Here I'm gonna find it so I can read it to the crowd. I just have to find what is it? It was Friday's newsletter. Uh, who knows how to find that? Well, anyway, I think I said something like, "I see this as basically OPEC having confidence in demand and in the market, and not believing that it was basically OPEC saying Omicron is not going to really influence demand that much, or we don't see it as a threat to the market. We don't see shutdowns coming. We don't see lockdowns coming." And I thought that was actually much more significant than any kind of like message that they were potentially sending to the Biden administration. Is that they're sending a message about where they see the market and the global economy going, which is basically, I mean, I think their message is like, we don't think that this is a threat to the global economy, which in my mind is like kind of more significant than like what they think they're saying to the Biden administration. But who
Yeah,
knows?
right. Well, in the US, we always take the news as being, US centric, and that's
Yeah.
not always the case. Not always the case. So, okay. JP Morgan, a buck 25 oil in 2022, a buck 50 in 2023. Dr. Wall, come on down. What do you see? You like a
Oh
dog?
my
Like more
God.
oil? $125 oil? Where you thinking?
Yeah, what the heck is going on? So here's my favorite. So I personally, like I want to know what goes into these. I want to know like what is it that they're punching in their, in their models to get this
Mhm,
number
mhm.
personally. And they don't always say that much, but apparently they think, quote, "We think OPEC Plus will slow committed increases in early 2022 and believes the group is unlikely to increase supply unless oil prices are well underpinned." I mean, that's a really big if. Like, how did they know that OPEC is gonna be like, well, January, it wasn't so great, so we're just not gonna increase in February, March. Or,
Right.
I mean, like, what gives them that indication just because they think that prices are, I mean, OPEC seems perfectly happy as long as the price is like above 60.
Yeah. So
I just like to me that seems like a ridiculous call to me. Like someone just like sat and was like, "Yeah, that's what I think." I mean, do they have like inside info? No, come on. They don't have any more information than like a reporter covering this gets, right?
so we
I
had
don't know.
it's funny, we had on Anas on Text on Gas this morning, and we asked him about this article, and he said that he thought eventually there will be an energy crisis that could lead to these prices, but he didn't see this year. But the thing that he pointed out was that China has a hard break at 75. Like, at 75, the price gets too expensive for them. And for the Biden administration, he said, I think 85. And so his kind of summarizing what I took from that was that there's certain things in the market right now that will incentivize, you know, SPR releases, pressure on OPEC to increase production from China or the US with the SPR releases. if prices continue to climb, that will help keep the prices down. And so, to your point, you take all that and you say, well, why would OPEC theoretically slow down again? Like, what's going to make them cut barrels off the market? Like, there's no
Yeah.
real incentive for them to do that.
Exactly. Like I get the fact that like one of the interesting things, is that like OPEC keeps increasing its total like cap or its total quota by 400,000 barrels a day, but they're not necessarily putting that much more on the market because each producer is only increasing according to their allotment. So some producers just aren't can't meet those increases. So you see like Saudi Arabia and Iraq and UAE increasing the full amount, and you see other producers not increasing. So you end up with a total that's like less than 400,000 barrels a day. But that's not going to last forever. First of all, I mean, some countries are just going to be like, okay, we'll take up the slack. And also, I know like Russia, has it looks like Russian production increases are kind of at their limit, but that's also because it's like winter time. When we get to like May, it becomes easier for Russia to increase, and they probably will be able to do that. So it just seems very short-sighted and bizarre thing to decide. I mean, I get that they're like making their bed and that's their book, and like, but it's like, remember like last week it was, JP Morgan was trying to basically explain why the price drop was totally unsupported by the Fed. They're like, this price reflects, like total global shutdown, and like
Mhm.
they're basically like yelling at the market for being wrong. You
Yeah.
can't just like yell at the market for being wrong, So this was their answer: $125 in 2022. Like when in 2022 are we going to hit $125? Like is it going to be September? Are we going to hit it in October? Is there going to be a hurricane that's going to take out production? Like, okay, those are all things that could happen, right? You could always get some
Sure.
sort of supply crisis that causes prices to spike. But if you're saying this is like a normal market thing, well, like you also said that we were going to hit 90 before the end of December, and that's December 6th.
It's still possible.
It is still possible. I
It
do
is still
believe it is
possible.
improbable, but it is still possible. Yes.
Well,
But saying 125 in 2022 is not going to make you get to 90 any sooner, is it?
right. The thing that I caught was interesting is the last line, which says the bank forecasts global oil demand to reach 99.8 to 101.5 million barrels a day in 2022, 2023. I'm old enough to remember when I was told we'd never get back there.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, 100 is so like
Yeah, we'd never get back to 100 million. Now we're talking about eclipsing it, going to 101.5 in 2022, 2023. It just goes so you talk about these long-term forecasts, and that's part of the problem is that there's all these things they're trying to bake into these predictions, and it just doesn't unfold. Now that was just stupid because anyone with a functioning brain would have realized that we were gonna get back to 100 million barrels a day. Like, that was I never understood that prediction. That seemed to be
oh no,
appease.
COVID has changed everything,
Yeah,
including what it's I mean, come on, like really? Can you break?
yeah.
Sorry.
So, okay, let's see here. China seeks first military base on Africa's Atlantic coast. U.S. intelligence finds. Okay, Dr. Wald, what's your angle here?
Yeah, I don't know. I was hoping you could shed some light on what we think about this, and particularly in light of Russia is kind of seems like it's encroaching militarily in the Ukraine again. Um, what is China interested in Equatorial Guinea? Equatorial Guinea is also an OPEC member. What's going on here? I don't know. What is China doing this? Is this like a big thing, or is this just like a let's poke the beast?
I always I'm always torn on trying to decide what it is that China is doing because uh, it's a weird dynamic, right? We all agree that they lie about their numbers, which means that their motivations are they're lying about as well. I mean, right on some level. And so when you look at what they have in Africa, they have all kinds of problems as far as getting back their debt being paid back and investing in Africa and continue to persuade people that Chinese investment in Africa is a good thing. So perhaps that is part of what they're looking at. Um, Beyond that, they do have, like I said, a lot of outstanding debt. But then there's also a theory that's out there that says that a lot of what China does is really just to is really just to give people jobs. Like they have so many people who need jobs,
Mm.
like the Belt and Road Initiative, that they're constantly exporting out jobs to try to keep people busy because if they stay in China, they wouldn't have anywhere to work. And so, really, a lot of it is more of an economic movement than it is just a strategic military movement. I don't think, and then we had on someone the other day talking about this on Inside the War Room. Um, I'm not entirely convinced that China's military prowess is really um, you think like Nazi Germany, trying to take over Europe or whatever. I don't get that read from them. Maybe I'm wrong. I know there's plenty of China watchers that think so. To me, it seems to be that they are trying to keep this thing afloat, and they're going to do whatever it can to create jobs. It's a communist country, right? So they have a lot of top down control over the economy, and oh, by the way, COVID cost a lot of jobs in China too, and so they need people to work. And so finally, I would recommend the Dragon's Gift is a great book to talk about the debt in China. I mean, sorry, the debt in Africa, and how that's actually structured.
Hmm.
There's a lot of misconceptions around that. So the Dragon's Gift, I can't remember the lady's name who wrote it, but yeah, I don't know. The Africa deal is weird because there's a great newsletter called the China Africa Project, and Eric Olander, he argues that actually he thinks that China is on the outs, not on the outs, but on the heading out of Africa. Like they've kind of done what they want to do there, and they're not really going to be interested in China. I mean, in Africa in the long term. So I don't know. There's all kinds of mixed signals. So I don't necessarily have a definitive
Uh,
read.
yeah, I was kind of thinking that it would be an interesting thing to consider. I know we talked about maybe having Dr. Jeremy Friedman come on the show when his new book about kind of global communism comes out, and thinking about like the spread of China in Africa, and the is it more investment driven, is it ideologically driven, kind of militarily driven, geostrategically driven, thinking along those lines, what's in it for them? Are they making investments in oil development though? Because if there are countries in Africa that are really interested
Mhm,
in seeing their oil resources developed, and with a lot of the pronouncements that we saw coming out of like COP26 about, we're committing not to make any, these governments are committing not to make any new investments in oil and gas, globally. Well, China wasn't making those commitments.
mhm,
Are they
mhm.
investing in oil and gas production in these areas? Perhaps that has something to do with it.
Well, they're obviously tied up in the Middle East with oil production, which we've
Oh
talked about
yeah.
a number of times. And so the Africa stuff is just the when you look at when you talk about Africa, it's unfortunately it's as you know, it's so many nations, and inside those nations there's so many different ethnic groups that it's not exactly easy to pinpoint how each different nation is going to respond to what's going on in China. And the other thing that China's going to battle in Africa is that there's a lot of stuff being talked about in the public which China does not like. And so
Mm,
I'm curious to see the next 20 years how they handle that because they can't silence people, all over the world. It's just so, but yeah, get Freeman on, that'd be great to hear his thoughts on that. And I don't know. I just don't buy that China is that big of an aggressor. I think that they do a lot of aggressive things. They break a lot of rules. They break a lot of laws, but
mm.
I just don't buy the military aggression. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I really do wonder, because you're right. It's not. I don't necessarily think of it as like a military aggression type thing, but more as like a "Hi, we're here" kind of thing. It's not like, like if this was the Cold War,
Mhm,
I think like the US would have a very different read
mhm,
on this. They'd be like, this is we have to have our own thing, because, you have
mhm,
to keep everything in balance and balance of power, because that's what keeps anyone from you know, actually attacking, is this, deterrence kind of idea. As opposed, and whereas I think this is more like a hey, we're here kind of
right,
thing.
right. No, yeah, that would seem to fit far more in line. If you look like the Taiwan deal, go on Twitter the past 3 months and type in like Taiwan being bombed or something, and there's some expert that says that this week China's gonna bomb Taiwan. This
Oh
week,
yeah.
China's gonna bomb Taiwan. This week, China's gonna bomb Taiwan. This is the week. And maybe it'll happen, but it hasn't happened yet. And for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, you can find someone who's an expert on China saying that they're going to bomb Taiwan. Like this is the week. It's going to happen. And it hasn't. So
Say it enough. Maybe, perhaps, I mean, not necessarily will someone ever bomb Taiwan, but it's just interesting.
yes, in the future, at some date to be determined, China will bomb Taiwan. We'll go ahead and put that on the books. But it's and so what is the vested interest in Africa? And that's the other thing is that the West has such deep hooks into Africa through financial aid that listen, China's got plenty of their own hooks in there as well. But I just don't know whether they go invade Uganda or Zambia or what benefit is that?
No. I mean, it could also be, there's a lot of, you know, terrorism stuff that goes on in Africa. I mean, I remember like reading, when
Oh yeah,
ISIS was the big thing, and everyone was like, "Oh, they're like training people out in Africa." There's a lot of that stuff that goes on. I mean, China may want to monitor it. They may. Who knows? I mean, there's a lot of stuff that goes on there that kind of, or for all you know, they're just really interested in protecting their mineral rights all over Africa.
yeah, yeah. I think that's far more of what's going on. Okay, OPEC's power was waning. Soon it may have more sway than ever. Okay, so we almost killed the beast that was OPEC, but now
Yeah.
it's back with a vengeance. It's like I went and saw that the latest Halloween movie. It's kind of like that. Like Michael
Mhm.
Myers is back.
Yeah. Full disclosure, I was quoted in this article, so I have a particular take on it.
Well, of course you do. That's why we got it
Yeah.
on the show.
Yeah, I mean, my take is basically, and I thought this was a good article because, it really did a deep dive kind of into what's going on. But one of the things that I talked about specifically was the long term investment issue, and really a lot of the producers that have been putting in significant amounts into capital expenditures are Saudi Aramco and ADNOC, and that is going to be significant in terms of OPEC's control and balance of power over global oil production in the long term future. In the kind of current situation, they maybe perhaps have the upper hand simply because US producers are not responding the way that people thought they would respond, so they just happen to have a little more power. I don't know. Now every time I think about this argument, I think about it. I was thinking about, well, what would Jeff Colgan say? Because he's very anti like OPEC having this power. So is it really more of a mirage, or like a kind of something that they've created rhetorically for themselves? I mean, look, OPEC raises production, prices go down a bit because that's not what the market expected, and now prices are going up.
Mhm.
So what's the deal here? Maybe they still don't really have all that much influence. I just do see the fact that long-term capital expenditures for the big companies in the non-OPEC world were so low for so long and continue to be pretty low, whereas the big state-owned oil companies are still investing to be like the biggest determining factor in who's going to be supplying oil in the long run.
Well, but so you talk about OPEC's influence, and I think on the point that he was making, I think there is the OPEC that makes the message, and the message, maybe maybe it is or isn't derived from reality, but that does have some sway in it. But you look at the shell producers, right? So if they don't, for some reason, this I can't see this happening, but if they don't come back, or U.S. shale production continues to decline, part of what's challenged OPEC is that crazy exponential growth that we saw. We might not see that ever again. I don't know, right? And so so that they had power, then they were challenged potentially, you could say, by the shale production, and then if that goes away, okay, yeah, they got power back, but the question would be is, and we never really got 15 years of $70 oil to see what the U.S. shale industry could really do, right? Because it was
Yeah.
kinda like it popped up and then it went down, it popped up and it went down, and now it's kind of down on the mat and it's got to get back up. So we never have seen a long sustained challenge to OPEC. We've seen some short
Yeah.
spurts, and obviously those things disrupted the market pretty wildly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just do think we're still going to see these, cycles, and there are normal cycles, and that's just the nature of the industry. But, and then, part of it was also that I think that, there's this idea, oh, well, like they don't matter anymore because the oil demand is going down. And I think that we've shown that that's not necessarily the case, but also that OPEC countries like Saudi Arabia believe that there will continue to be a huge market for their products, especially in the developing world. So even if Europe is like, we're giving up on this thing, we don't mind being in the dark. They see a huge market for their product in Africa and elsewhere, and that is, I think, significant and just continuously overlooked by the West.
Yeah, well, I think it's also gonna depend on we talk about China and Africa, how much oil production comes online from Africa over the next decade, and do those nations become OPEC member nations, right?
Well, a lot of them have been, yeah. I mean, it is interesting because, and does that shift the balance of power within OPEC
Right.
to, I mean, you've still got the big time producers like Saudi Arabia, Iraq, UAE, that are
Mhm.
producing a lot, but how many, I mean, and a lot of these African nations are much smaller producers, and they don't really have the weight. But if there are enough of them and they band together, and remember, there used to be the OAPEC, the Arab
Mhm.
producing OPEC members.
Mhm.
Are they going to band together and form like an African one? And will they be significant enough to maybe challenge the kind of Arab Gulf supremacy there? It's interesting, and I do think that OPEC provides, and one of the things that Jeff Colgan did address in his book is that OPEC is in some ways a political group, but there's also an economic and a financial component, and for these nations to gain expertise and know-how from these other countries that have been doing oil development for much longer. And so, to what extent will they be still kind of reliant maybe on, say, Saudi or UAE investment or technology or know-how, and that will kind of prevent them from maybe challenging that block politically in OPEC. And this is like long-term speculation, obviously. Like, I don't think this is what's gonna like suddenly pop up in the next OPEC meeting, but
Yeah, not
you
unless,
never
like,
know.
Venezuela starts cranking out back to 2,000,000 barrels a day or something crazy,
Yeah.
so you need some monumental and that I think is kind of the thing here, which is it's hard to see, I guess it's possible, some kind of new shale revolution somewhere else in the world that would throw so many barrels on the market that would kind of potentially challenge where we're at. So anything we'll see in the future, you would expect to be kind of slow, gradual, incremental growth,
Yeah.
which could chip away from the larger OPEC narrative. But we're not going to see U.S. production come out and triple next year. That's not happening. I don't think.
No, I mean,
I think
I
we're
think
safe.
I just think though that had we not had the issue from Hurricane Ida, we would have seen more US production sooner. Because I think that the decline from the Gulf of Mexico kind of took, I think that we did see lower US production because of that. So like now we're up to like 11.6,
Mhm.
and we could have been up to that, you know, earlier or whatnot, or we could have been at 11.5 sooner had we not had that production offline for so long. So I think that kind of people didn't necessarily realize that maybe we were seeing the effects of this problem with the offshore production, and they were interpreting it as problems with the onshore production.
Okay. All right. Last story, I believe, for the day.
Yeah.
Global oil CEOs stress need for fossil fuel despite push for cleaner energy. Yeah.
Yeah. So this came from a kind of question that I posed to the Twitter world, because there's this World Petroleum Congress in Houston this week, and some of the reporting that I was seeing out of it seemed to be very much of like a kind of defensiveness. And so I was wondering, is this World Petroleum Congress kind of like the industry's reaction, or like their opportunity at a rebuttal for COP26. So COP26 was all about get rid of fossil fuels. We don't need fossil fuels. We need to phase out fossil fuels. And is this the opportunity that the oil, or is oil and gas basically taking this as an opportunity to make their case? And I think some people misinterpreted my use of the word rebuttal to be like the rebuttal against climate change, which is not at all what I meant. I meant more are they taking this as their opportunity to make the case for why we still need oil and gas? And some of
Which
the
we do.
yeah, I mean, we do, but are they going to make that case here? And it seemed like it seemed like at the very least, like Ahmed Nasser was taking it as an opportunity to make the cases for why why they're needed. I mean, some of the quotes from it were pretty, I don't think incendiary or anything like that, but it was kind of interesting to see like what they were saying, like what he was saying. I gave some examples. So someone reported that Total CEO, he called the failure to address demand main deficiency in COP26 with a heavy supply focus. Quote, there is no way to make this transition possible if we don't put in place policies to curb demand. So he's basically saying you can't do this and still have the same demand. So that seems like a rebuttal to some of the things that were going on there. And then, some other examples. So Ahmed Nasser said, it's worrying that people believe the right energy transition strategy is underway. Quote, it is not. It is deeply flawed. Energy security, economic development, and affordability imperatives are clearly not receiving enough attention. His conclusion was, while there may be pushback on my remarks today, I know that if we do not speak up as an industry, no one else will do so on our behalf. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for these stubborn facts to be heard loud and clear around the world before it's too late. That's to me that he's basically saying, he's like, we need to tell people why we're an important industry because nobody else is going to do it, obviously. So I kind of posed that question, and I did get, some people were saying, well, maybe a little bit. Like this woman said, well, she said, I say it's run the gamut so far, but potential supply gap has been addressed. Company messaging is very varied, but everyone's still talking about their low carbon plans. So maybe it's not enough. Maybe Nasser is really just the outlier.
Yeah, well, they've got to say something somewhere, sometime, or eventually it's going to be too late. So, unfortunately.
Yeah.
All right, Dr. Wald, where will you be this week?
Where will I be this week? Let's see. I will be on investing.com, and hopefully I think I'm going to have a piece up on the New Atlanticist, which is a kind of publication that the Atlantic Council puts out. It's going to be talking about some of the decarbonization efforts underway in industry, like the big kind of emitters in industry, like steel and aluminum and cement, and some of the things that they are doing.
Okay, and I will be in Houston on Friday to be a moderator at the U.S. African Energy Forum 2021. The panel will be Africa as a Global Hub for Strategic Minerals and Energy Development. So if you are there, swing by. Dr. Foreman will be presenting, I think, the panel right after mine. So he'll be there as well. So a lot of cool stuff. And it's actually starting on Thursday, but I can't be there Thursday. So I'll be there on Friday. With that, we'll be off until next Wednesday. We'll talk to everyone then.